Detective Junho thought he was investigating missing persons cases, until he found the island and discovered that the masked game master he'd been hunting was his own brother, the cop who'd disappeared 5 years ago after losing everything to debt. Welcome to Vaulted Secrets. Before we begin this story of family betrayal, financial desperation, and the moment when protecting the innocent becomes orchestrating their deaths, tell me in the comments how far would you go to save your family from debt. And if you believe some secrets destroy the people we love most, hit that subscribe button. This story will show you that sometimes the person hunting the monster and the monster itself share the same blood. Detective Junho stared at the 47th missing person file spread across his desk in the Seoul Metropolitan Police Station. 47 people, all with the same profile, massive gambling debts, desperate families, and then ... nothing. They simply vanished, leaving behind only cryptic business cards with shapes on them. A circle, a triangle, a square. For 2 years, Junho had been tracking what he believed was South Korea's most sophisticated human trafficking ring. The missing people came from all walks of life: factory workers drowning in loan shark debt, small business owners facing bankruptcy, even a few doctors and lawyers who had made bad investments. But they all shared one thing: they owed money they could never repay. What Junho didn't know was that he was hunting his own brother. Hwang In-ho had been missing for 5 years. Officially, he was listed as a suicide. Another police officer who couldn't handle the pressure and had jumped from Mapo Bridge into the Han River. His body was never found, which wasn't unusual. The river had claimed many desperate souls, and not all of them surfaced. But Junho had never believed his brother was dead. In-ho was too strong, too stubborn, too protective of his family to simply give up. There had to be another explanation for his disappearance. The truth was far worse than suicide. 5 years earlier, Officer Hwang In-ho had been Seoul's most decorated community policeman. He worked the night shift in Gangnam District, helping drunk businessmen get home safely, mediating domestic disputes, and occasionally chasing down purse snatchers. It was honest work, but it didn't pay enough to cover his wife's medical bills when she was diagnosed with leukemia. In-ho had borrowed money from the wrong people. First, legitimate banks that required his badge as collateral. Then, when those funds ran out, less legitimate sources that required much more than collateral. Within 18 months, In-ho owed 200 million won to loan sharks who didn't care that he was a police officer. In fact, they considered it an advantage. When his wife died, despite the expensive treatments, In-ho was left with crushing debt and a 7-year-old daughter he couldn't afford to feed. The collectors were coming for his apartment, his car, and eventually they threatened to come for his daughter. That's when In-ho received the invitation, a simple business card with geometric shapes and a phone number. The same card that Junho would later find in the belongings of 47 missing people. In-ho had won the games. He was one of only 6 survivors out of 456 players. The prize money, to 45.6 billion won, was enough to pay his debts, secure his daughter's future, and disappear forever. But instead of disappearing, In-ho had made a different choice. He had stayed on the island and become part of the organization that had saved his life by destroying others. For 5 years, while Junho searched for his missing brother, In-ho had been climbing the ranks of the game organization. His police training made him valuable. He understood investigation techniques, surveillance, and most importantly, how to stay hidden from law enforcement. Within 3 years, he had become the frontman, the masked figure who oversaw the games and selected the players. Junho's investigation had brought him closer to the truth than he realized. Every missing person he tracked, every family he interviewed, every clue he followed was leading him directly to his brother. But he didn't know it yet. The breakthrough came when Junho discovered a pattern in the missing person's phone records. In the weeks before their disappearances, each victim had received calls from burner phones traced to the same area, a remote section of coast where wealthy families kept private islands. Junho had requested maritime patrol records and found something interesting: regular boat traffic to an uninhabited island owned by a shell company with ties to offshore gambling operations. The island appeared on no tourist maps and had no official purpose. On October 15, 2023, Detective Junho made a decision that would destroy everything he believed about his family. He took unauthorized leave, borrowed a fishing boat, and sailed to the island to investigate alone. What he found there would haunt him for the rest of his life. The island looked abandoned from the outside. Dense forest, rocky beaches, no visible structures. But Junho's police training told him to look deeper. He circled the island twice before finding a concealed dock on the north side, hidden by artificial rock formations that looked natural from a distance. Junho anchored his boat a kilometer away and swam to shore. The dock was clearly functional. Recent boat damage on the pilings, fresh oil stains, security cameras disguised as seabirds. This was an active facility designed to look unused. He spent 6 hours exploring the island before finding the entrance, a cave opening that led to underground tunnels carved into the rock. The tunnels were lined with concrete and lit by LED strips. This wasn't a natural cave system. Someone had spent millions of won turning this island into a hidden facility. As Junho moved deeper into the complex, he began hearing sounds, machinery, generators, and something else. Voices. Hundreds of voices, speaking in unison like a crowd, following instructions. The tunnels opened into a massive underground complex with multiple levels connected by staircases. Junho found observation windows that looked down into enormous rooms filled with people wearing numbered uniforms. They were playing children's games, red light, green light, tug of war, marbles, but the losers weren't just eliminated from the game. They were eliminated permanently. Junho watched in horror as masked guards in pink uniforms dragged bodies away while survivors were forced to continue playing. This wasn't a trafficking operation, it was systematic murder disguised as games, with billions of won in prize money for the sole survivor. But the worst discovery was yet to come. Junho found the control room where the games were orchestrated. Banks of monitors showed every angle of the playing fields, sleeping quarters, and elimination areas. Technicians tracked player statistics, betting odds, and survival probabilities. This was a massive operation with international financing and sophisticated technology, and overseeing it all was a figure in a geometric mask, the front man who gave orders to guards, approved eliminations, and selected which games would be played next. Junho recognized the voice immediately. It was deeper now, harder, corrupted by 5 years of orchestrating death. But it was unmistakably his brother's voice. Hwang In-ho was alive. He hadn't committed suicide, he hadn't been trafficked or murdered. He had become the architect of South Korea's most sophisticated killing operation, personally responsible for the deaths of thousands of people whose only crime was owing money they couldn't repay. Junho spent 3 hours in the ventilation system, recording everything with his phone. He documented the games, the eliminations, the betting system, and most importantly, the moment when his brother removed his mask in the privacy of his office. The face was older, scarred by 5 years of stress and violence, but it was definitely In-ho, the brother who had taught Junho to ride a bicycle, who had helped him study for police academy exams, who had once arrested a man for hitting his wife, was now ordering the executions of hundreds of people for the entertainment of wealthy spectators. Junho had enough evidence to shut down the operation and arrest everyone involved. But arresting everyone involved meant arresting his brother. As Junho prepared to leave the island, he made a mistake that nearly cost him his life. He triggered a motion sensor while crawling through a service tunnel, and within minutes, the entire facility was on lockdown. Guards began systematic searches of every level, every room, every possible hiding place. Junho found himself trapped in the control room as guards searched the corridors outside. He had nowhere to run, no way to escape, and hours of incriminating footage on his phone that would expose the entire operation. That's when In-ho entered the control room alone, still wearing his mask. "I know you're here," In-ho said quietly. "I've been tracking your investigation for months. You're very thorough, little brother, just like always." Junho emerged from behind the equipment rack, weapon drawn but trembling. He had imagined this moment for 5 years, but never like this. Never with his brother wearing a mask that represented the deaths of thousands of innocent people. "Take off the mask," Junho said. In-ho complied, revealing a face that Junho barely recognized. The brother he remembered had been kind, optimistic, driven by a desire to help people. The man standing before him looked like he hadn't slept peacefully in years. "You're supposed to be dead," Junho whispered. "I am dead," In-ho replied. Hwang In-ho, the police officer who couldn't save his wife or pay his debts, died 5 years ago. I'm someone else now. I'm a survivor, and I'm very good at helping other people survive, too. The people who played these games chose to be here. They signed contracts, they accepted the risks. Junho stared at his brother, trying to understand how someone who had dedicated his life to protecting people could become someone who orchestrated their deaths for entertainment. "What happened to you?" Junho asked. "I learned that the world doesn't care about good intentions," In-ho said. "I followed the rules, worked honest jobs, trusted the system, and when my family needed help, the system let us die. So I found a different system, one that actually pays for results." Junho realized that his brother wasn't making excuses. He genuinely believed that what he was doing was justified. 5 years of rationalizing murder had convinced him that he was providing a service, giving desperate people a chance to solve their problems through games instead of suicide. "You have to stop this," Junho said. "I can't stop this. Even if I wanted to, which I don't. This operation is bigger than me. International investors, government connections, billions of won in annual revenue. If I disappeared tomorrow, someone else would take over, and nothing would change except that I'd be dead." In-ho walked to the window overlooking the current game, a brutal version of tug of war, where the losing team fell to their deaths. "But I can offer you something else," In-ho continued. "You can leave this island and pretend you never found it. Destroy the footage, close the missing persons cases, and let sleeping dogs lie. In exchange, I'll make sure the games become more selective, fewer players, higher standards for entry. We can reduce the casualties while maintaining the operation." Junho realized his brother was offering him a deal, his silence in exchange for reducing the number of future victims. It wasn't justice, but it might save lives. "And if I refuse, then you become player 457, In-ho said quietly, "and we both know how those games end." Junho was being given the same choice his brother had faced 5 years earlier: join the system or become a victim of it. Junho had 3 options, and all of them were terrible. Option 1: arrest his brother and expose the games. This would save future victims but would result in Inho's execution and would likely just move the operation to another location under different management. Option 2: accept his brother's deal and become complicit in mass murder while potentially reducing the number of victims. Option 3: refuse the deal and become the next victim, leaving the operation intact and his brother unchanged. Junho thought about the 47 missing persons files on his desk, the families who were still hoping for answers, the hundreds of people who had died in these games over the past 5 years. Then he thought about his brother, not the masked figure standing before him, but the man who had once spent his own money buying food for homeless people during his patrol shifts. There's a 4th option, Junho said finally, which is, you help me destroy this place from the inside. Not just shut it down completely, destroy the organization, the funding, the international connections. Make it impossible for anyone to restart the operation somewhere else. Inho stared at his brother for a long moment. That would require me to betray people who trust me, forfeit billions of won, and probably get both of us killed. Yes, and in exchange, you get to be Wang Inho. Again, instead of the front man, you get to remember what it feels like to save lives instead of ending them. Inho was quiet for several minutes, watching the tug-of-war game reach its deadly conclusion. 20 people had just died for the entertainment of wealthy spectators who would never face consequences for their bloodthirsty gambling. The next games start in 3 days, Inho said finally. 456 new players, all selected and confirmed. If we're going to do this, we have to do it before they arrive. What do you need from me? I need you to contact Interpol, not Seoul Police. This operation has government protection at the local level, but international pressure might force a real investigation. I'll provide you with financial records, investor lists, and government contacts. Everything you need to dismantle the entire network. And the current players. There are 127 survivors from the previous games. They'll be evacuated and given new identities if they agree to testify. The ones who refuse. Inho paused. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Over the next 48 hours, Junho and Inho worked together to systematically destroy the operation their family had been divided by. Inho provided access to encrypted files, financial records, and communication logs that revealed the scope of the games. 12 locations worldwide, over 50,000 deaths in the past decade, and investment capital from sources ranging from tech billionaires to corrupt government officials. Junho coordinated with Interpol to organize simultaneous raids on all 12 locations. The timing had to be perfect. If any one location was compromised early, the others would disappear overnight. But their biggest challenge wasn't logistical, it was personal. Working together for the first time in 5 years, both brothers realized how much they had lost when their family was torn apart by financial desperation. I never stopped looking for you, Junho said as they copied files from the island servers. I know. I've been monitoring your investigation from the beginning. You're a good detective, better than I ever was. You were a good cop. Before all this, I was a naive cop. I thought following the rules would be enough to protect the people I cared about. I learned too late that sometimes you have to break the system to beat the system. So what happens after we destroy this place? Inho looked around the control room that had been his domain for 5 years. I turned myself in and face trial for my crimes. I testify against everyone involved. And I spend the rest of my life in prison, knowing that I chose family over justice when it was too late to matter. What about your daughter? She thinks I'm dead. That's probably better than knowing what I became. Junho realized that his brother's greatest punishment wouldn't be prison. It would be living with the knowledge that he had become everything he had once fought against. On October 18, 2023, at exactly 3 a.m. local time, coordinated raids shut down all 12 game locations simultaneously. Over 200 suspects were arrested, including government officials, international investors, and facility managers. The operation had generated over 500 billion won in the past 5 years, all of which was seized and frozen pending investigation. The 127 surviving players were offered witness protection and psychological counseling. Most accepted new identities and relocated to different countries. A few chose to testify publicly about their experiences, helping to prevent similar operations from recruiting new victims. Junho's missing persons cases were officially closed, with families finally receiving answers about their loved ones' fates. The evidence recovered from the island provided closure for thousands of families worldwide who had lost relatives to the games. Hwang In-ho is serving life in prison without the possibility of parole. He spends his time writing detailed accounts of the game's operation, helping investigators track down remaining assets and accomplices. His testimony has been instrumental in preventing similar operations from taking root in other countries. Detective Junho was promoted to chief inspector, and now heads an international task force focused on human trafficking and organized murder schemes. He visits his brother once a month. and they're slowly rebuilding a relationship based on shared commitment to justice rather than shared blood. In-ho's daughter, now 13, knows the truth about her father. Junho made the difficult decision to tell her when she was old enough to understand. She chooses not to visit him in prison, but she keeps the letters he writes to her. Someday, she might be ready to forgive him. Someday, he might be ready to forgive himself. The island where the games took place has been converted into a memorial for the victims. Each of the 50,000 plus people who died in games worldwide is remembered by name, along with information about their families and the deaths that led them to desperate choices. Junho learned that sometimes the people we love most are capable of becoming the people we fear most. But he also learned that family bonds can survive even the most unthinkable betrayals, and that redemption is possible even for people who have committed unforgivable crimes. In-ho learned that surviving isn't the same as living, and that protecting one person at the cost of thousands of others isn't protection, it's selfishness disguised as love. Both brothers learned that the system they had trusted to protect good people and punish bad people was more complicated than they had believed. Sometimes good people do terrible things for understandable reasons. Sometimes the only way to beat a corrupt system is to infiltrate it first. The games are over. The island is silent, but the families they destroyed and the families they saved will carry the consequences of their choices forever. So I ask you, if someone you loved became someone you couldn't recognize, would you choose family loyalty or justice? Would you risk everything to save them from themselves, even if it meant destroying them in the process? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us about the impossible choices you faced, the family members who disappointed you, or the moments when love and justice pulled you in opposite directions. And if this story moved you, subscribe to Vaulted Secrets. We're here to explore the way to family secrets, the price of survival, and the impossible choices that define who we become when everything we believe about our loved ones turns out to be wrong. Because sometimes the person hunting the monster discovers that the monster shares their blood. Sometimes love means destroying the person you're trying to save. And sometimes the greatest family secret is that there are no heroes or villains. Just people making impossible choices in impossible circumstances. Thanks for watching, and remember, family loyalty isn't always about protecting each other from the world. Sometimes it's about protecting the world from each other, even when it breaks your heart to do it.